Hey, Sean here with the Adventist Review. I'm sitting down with Karnik Doukmetzian, General Counsel for the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. And I'm glad you took a few minutes out of your busy schedule to sit down with me because your schedule is really busy right now, isn't it?
We're going 16 hours a day.
16 hours a day. And so what are some of the responsibilities that you carry? I want to get into how this is structured and how the church works, but you carry a lot of different responsibilities at the session, don't you?
My day starts with steering committee in the morning. That's where all the leadership reviews the day's agenda. And we end with the end of the day with a review of what happened during the day. And that happens after the last evening meeting. So we go from one end of the morning till the other end of the evening.
I see a lot of speculation, Karnik, about how the church works, what happens here, how is this structured, who makes decisions. Enlighten us a little bit about how the church is structured. How are we making decisions? Who's making the decisions here?
You know, we have over 22 or 23 million members, and it's nice to get all of them together to meet, but it's an impossibility. And so the church operates on the basis of representation. Representatives from different parts of the world representing their territories come here. We have 2,813 delegates, I believe, that come here to conduct the business of the church. And that includes things like the election of officers and departmental directors, reviewing items for the church manual, which is going on this morning.
Right behind me as we're
yes,
talking.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Amending the Constitution and bylaws. These are things that the church as a whole has decided need to be done with representation on a worldwide basis. Obviously, we have other meetings that go on year after year where smaller groups conduct the business of the church during that time. But at this meeting is the largest representation of church members. We try to limit the membership of the committee that's here. Otherwise, you'd have
a million.
Thousands of people here. Other than the expense, it's hard to manage a large group like that because of the business that needs to take place. Even with all this representation, it still takes a long time to get through some of the business items. Some people need to be heard. Others have suggestions that are valid suggestions. They provide their input. And that, of course, provides with the changes that need to take place over time.
There's really several meetings taking place at once here. We've got the business on the floor that you just alluded to.
Yes.
Right now they're going through policy and they're parsing words and that kind of thing. And then there's also the nominating committee, which
Correct.
meets concurrently with the business on the floor. And you kind of have your hand in both of those. You're actually on nominating committee
I'm
this time.
a member of the nominating committee.
Okay, so let's be honest then. It's really a shadowy cabal that just drives the church in secret,
of course.
right? That's how that works. Well, there is some secrecy though in that room. Why? Why is it? I heard some people complaining our church should be absolutely open about everything. Why is the work of the nominating committee done in private?
Well, let's back up a little bit and talk about how that nominating committee is formed.
Please do. Okay.
The delegates here caucus by their division. So, for example, the West Africa division would have 150 delegates here at the session. They are entitled to 10% of their delegation to be part of the nominating committee. So the nominating committee is made up of 277 individuals representing each of those divisions. And as they meet, they review the names that are presented. Names are nominated from within that group for the various positions, whether it's the officers of the General Conference, the departmental directors. The division officers will also be elected by that, or nominated by that same group. So these individuals meet and information is shared about each of the candidates. If a candidate obviously is an incumbent, we have some information, we know that individual. But if an individual is new to the committee, information is shared about their background, their education, where they've worked. Comments are made about the individual, pro and against. And you don't want to do that in a session where you have 2,800 people. The individuals who are members of the nominating committee not only are sworn to secrecy, they sign a confidentiality agreement, non-disclosure agreement.
There's an NDA back
there is.
Wow. Okay.
And in addition, their cell phones are taken at the door and kept in locked pouches until the session is over. And the reason for that is we don't want information to be shared before the nominees have had a chance to be communicated with, and the information is shared widely. But it does provide an opportunity for those individuals to then meet and make decisions.
So here's what I want to ask you. As you watch this, you have an eye on the business on the floor. I mean, you're very busy. I'm really glad I've got a few minutes with you today. What do you wish? I mean, there are people that this is their 5th or 6th GC session. There are people that are here for the first time. As you watch what's playing out on the floor, well, you're in nominating committee a lot, but as you watch what's playing out, what is it that you wish people understood a little better than maybe sometimes happens?
Well, different parts of the church conduct business in a different way.
Well, that makes things complicated.
It makes very complicated because they come here to this session and the General Conference operates in a particular way, and they think that this large body should be operating the same way that their conference or union session operates, which is not the case. So I think it's important for them not only to know about the business that is going to take place at the session, that's why the agenda is shared with them ahead of time so they can review that, but also understand how the business of the church takes place. Some people love to go to the mic and make amendments to motions. Some people do that repeatedly. Others just sit there and put up their card and vote. It's important for people to exercise their rights,
right?
But it's also important for them to be educated not only on the information that is being handled, but also on what they need to do to prepare and how the system, the meeting operates.
One of the things that I've heard a lot of people do, I mean, in previous sessions, this one, we paused a little bit on this point, is that I hear a lot of point of order, point of order, point of order. What is a point of order? Because not everything that people say is a point of order when they get to the mic appears to be so. So what actually is that? It was a big deal 3 years ago, I'm sorry. And we actually paused on the floor here to discuss that a little bit.
Yes.
What is a point of order?
It's important for people to understand what a point of order is. A lot of times people think that a point of order is something you just interrupt everyone. And it's true. It's to interrupt the business of the meeting. But it is usually things that are of general concern to the process of the meeting. For example, it's too cold. Turn the heat up. That's a point of order. Or if you can't hear a delegate speaking because the microphone is not properly connecting, that's a point of order. Or if information needs to be shared of a general nature, not specific to what's being discussed at the time. But a lot of people think, well, I have a point of order, so I'm just going to get up. And what happens with a point of order, we have a queuing system. Everybody scans their badge in order to speak. And my associate sitting there will look at the names on the list on the screen. But if a person has a point of order, they jump to the top of the list. So there may be 10 or 15 people lined up. And so when somebody says, I have a point of order, they go to the top of the list. But then it's not really a point of order.
So I would actually suspect there are people that understand that and then perhaps are tempted to abuse a point of order.
Yes, and that's why it's important for them to read the rules of order and understand when it is proper to call a point of order. And that's part of the role of the parliamentarian as well, to assist the chair to make that determination that this is or this is not a point of order.
Another quick question, and I know you've got to go, but this time I've seen a lot of, it's a handful of people saying, we want to change the agenda. And there seems to be some misunderstanding about how the agenda is built, or when you build it, or when you might submit an item. How is that agenda created?
Well, the agenda is created by the Executive Committee and General Conference Administration. And they'll review and prepare. And there are some things that have to go in the agenda. The report of the President, the Secretary, the Treasurer, the audit report, the reports from departments, the church manual, the Constitution and bylaws. Those are all standard items that have to go in the agenda. But a lot of times the membership feels, the delegates feel, well, I have a very pressing item that needs to go on the agenda, and so I want to insert that. Well, by the time the agenda is placed before the people here, it's gone through various reviews and stages. Documentation has been prepared to support the agenda items. And so it's very difficult to input something into the agenda at that point. The delegates have already had the agenda. They've already reviewed the material attached. And so the process we follow is if an agenda item is to be brought forward, the steering committee, which meets every morning, will review that recommendation or that suggestion and make a determination whether or not it's mundane to what's going on and should be inserted into the agenda or considered for future agenda. We had an item this morning in steering committee that a delegate brought forward on Friday and requested that this matter be placed on the agenda. steering committee discussed it this morning
Right.
and said, we will take it under advisement. We will pass it on to the administration to review and work on it. And if it needs to come back, it'll come back. But it's very difficult to bring an agenda item at this late stage and be prepared to deal or discuss with the committee an item that nobody really has been prepared for. The part of the problem is that these individuals from different parts of the world, in their sessions, in their union sessions, they're used to doing that. They're used to
On the
raising
fly.
on the fly,
Ah.
and they're trying to do the same thing here. But when you have 2,800 people here, and getting ready for an agenda as complicated as the one here is, it's very difficult. It's different when you have 100 people on your or 200 people at your session, and the agenda items coming from the floor are regular. Here, that's not the case.
So if I want something on the agenda in 2030, I want a mandate that all pastors must wear cowboy boots when they're in the pulpit. Right? I want that on the agenda. I want the saints to deliberate this. Where do I start?
The process is usually to provide that agenda item to your union executive committee. They will review it, pass it on to the division. The division will pass it on to the general conference.
Okay,
and there have been some of those. I remember 15 or 20 years ago, there was a movement in a local church about amending part of one of our fundamental beliefs, dealing with social activity and the environment. And a local church sent that request to their conference, went on to the union, and it eventually ended up on the floor of the GC session, having gone through the various stages. So it is possible to do that, but you have to follow that process.
So you start locally. If you've got a burden, you start locally. When somebody's elected, like Elder Kohler was on Friday, and it's confirmed on the floor, when does that term start?
It starts immediately upon their election.
Right. That's got to be a bit of a whirlwind for that individual.
Absolutely, absolutely. For not only for that individual, but also their family. Their life is just turned upside down because all of a sudden they have all new responsibilities that they have to now step into, and it's quite a challenge.
What's Karnik's favorite thing about GC session? What are the highlights for you? Are there parts that you particularly enjoy?
I enjoy seeing old friends.
And the older you get, the older your friends get?
The older my friends get, and the more of them, hopefully.
Thanks for taking a few minutes with me this morning, Karnik, and helping us understand a little bit about how our church works.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Be sure to visit AdventistReview.org and see what's actually going on. There's all kinds of websites, but maybe the ones that the church has be your best source of good information. Thanks for joining me.